Hey everyone, I'm here with Kyle Clark. What's going on, Kyle?
Hey, Jimmy. Friday morning here in Boston. It's finally gotten as cold as you'd expect it to be in the winter, but certainly staying busy.
I love it. Yeah, so this is actually going to be our first installment of the How I Got My Job in Crypto series. So Kyle, it's an you're our inaugural guest. So welcome aboard.
Well, thank you, and it's good to start with me. I'll set a very reasonable bar for somebody else to eclipse,
It's
and I
always
have no problem being the guinea pig, so it works out well.
love it. Yeah, so what we want to do with this series is talk to folks who are working in, Web3 and crypto, kind of unpack how they got their job, what drew them to the industry, and then I think really crucially what we want to do is put together the insights and package that stuff together so our audience can be like, "Oh, this is how I can start my career. This is how I can advance my career." Kyle, let's just kick it off. Like, why don't you introduce yourself, what you're up to, where you're working, and we'll dive in from there.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, my name is Kyle Clark. I'm a director of business development at ZeroHash, and ZeroHash is really a platform that provides crypto as a service the same way that banking as a service or brokerage as a service exists. We were really built on the thesis that every financial services company, one way or another, is going to become a crypto company. Every crypto company is going to start providing products that err more towards traditional financial services. So you look at things like Coinbase accepting, direct deposits for your paychecks, or card products in the space. We really hope to be able to serve both of these particular verticals, whether that be allowing a TradFi platform to embed, solutions around custody, buy, sell, yield, spending rewards, directly into their existing UI, or on the crypto side of the aisle, maybe providing a licensed infrastructure for a particular platform to operate in a compliant fashion. And at a high level, those are really the two groups that we serve, TradFi and crypto native. All of our solutions at ZeroHash are really API endpoints. We are the technology and the licensing, and it's really our clients that provide the magic that makes these products a success.
Yeah, and I think one of the key insights I've developed too, and I feel like you probably see this, is the blurring of the line between what is a crypto company and what's not. Really, we're going to see people adopt some of this technology into some part of their stack, right? So,
Yeah. Well, and again, our when we talk to banks, for example, again, banks see themselves losing deposits, to these upstart crypto orgs. They need solutions to be able to compete. Same thing goes with, traditional investment platforms and broker dealers. They see different types of crypto trading platforms talk about fractional shares. Well, they need to be able to provide crypto solutions, or they are inevitably, going to lose their existing clients to platforms where, those users can access exactly the types of products that they want. So I have an interesting story, really, how I got into the crypto space. In Boston back in 2015, I was working at a fintech startup that started to collaborate really closely with Fidelity, again, based here in Boston. So we spent a lot of time in their FCAT lab, the Fidelity Center for Advanced Technology. And I noticed that everyone in that lab, the only thing they cared about wasn't what we were doing. All they cared about was blockchain settlement and Bitcoin. And that was really my first introduction. And of course, you work really closely with the team. You get kind of friendly, pick their brain over, coffee and drinks. And I was kind of opened up to the digital asset space, by Fidelity. And that's what really got me into it. And I thought, well, if all these smart people think that, this is the most important thing going on, this is the horse I should hitch my wagon to. So ever since then, I've been in the space one way or another, and kind of parlaying back into how I ended up at ZeroHash. Working closely with Fidelity at that fintech startup that was not crypto digital assets. I transitioned that and went to go work for a blockchain dev shop that did smart contract audit and different types of enterprise proofs of concept for different organizations, and it was very much so a startup. Think like no healthcare, no 401k. Given how nascent the industry was, albeit super interesting, the company didn't do very well. So I had to go kind of back and get a real job. And I ended up at a company called Sovos, which is a tax, risk management, and compliance firm, again, based here in Boston, but really a global presence. And I was in charge of their business development for digital assets. And at this time, right around 2018, the only orgs here in the US that actually cared about compliance and tax and those types of subjects were the big players. So I got to work really closely with Coinbase and Gemini and BlockFi and a handful of others as this industry evolved from a regulatory standpoint and communicating with them, what they needed to do to be compliant as best we could to stay in Rails, and working really closely with them from an advocacy standpoint. ZeroHash was not a client of mine, but I worked really closely with the team as they were getting sped up. Of course, you're building a relationship, trying to be a thought partner. And again, after kind of getting very comfortable with the ZeroHash team, they had mentioned to me that they were going to start, expanding, and asked if I wanted to come on board. And, truth be told, I had had enough of corporate America, and, I was ready to get back into crypto rather than just being on the edges and kind of having a insight in.
One of the things that we get asked a lot and I have conversations with is, getting into crypto, there's sort of a cold start problem where people who are hiring are looking for folks with experience. And so it's really hard if you don't already have experience to make that initial leap in there. So I'm curious, how did you solve for that in your first job at that startup?
Again, as I mentioned, the industry is so nascent. So oftentimes it's really difficult to find people who have experience in the space specifically. I did a lot of self-education. I took, online courses through universities to get certificates and licenses. And there are a few, great ones out there that I could certainly share. But it was really kind of building that acumen over time. And of course, the space changes so quickly. What's new, this time last year, the things that we were working on, what you were working on at Chainlink, what I was working on at ZeroHash, are probably drastically different than what you're doing today. So again, it's somewhat of a moving target, but I would, certainly suggest self-educating, being involved as much as you can, going to hangouts, different types of meetups that may take place, and really building your network that way. I know for some people that's not necessarily the most attractive thing. Maybe you want to be more tech product focused. I completely understand that. I think more than anything else, that the common trait that everyone in this space shares, regardless of the role you have at a certain organization, is an enthusiasm for the promise of what this technology will deliver. So that's really universal, I would say. And again, those are the types of people you want to find, and those are the types of people you want to surround yourself with.
Yeah. So solving this cold start problem, right? If you don't already have the experiences, you just really have to put the onus on yourself to self-educate, to dive in, to make it happen for you.
And I would say to that also, what you want to do, whether it's product, whether it's engineering, whether it's marketing, whether it's business development. And when you look for opportunities in the space, keep in mind the fit for the role you're looking for. And by that, I mean a company that's, right out of the gate, maybe seed round, Series A, they may not be at the point where they can expand a marketing team or a business development team for that matter. But they may be now focused on product. So again, depending on the role you want, you can try to find organizations that would be the type of group that would have that role, whether that's employee count, whether that's funding size. I do think that's a great place to start. And, oftentimes, like all jobs in life, your first one may not be the best one, or it won't be the best one. Let me tell you that. You get better, and you continue to improve. Maybe you get lucky, you stay at, one shop for your whole life. What I have found is, that's not too common. So each role you have, you build. And I would say for that matter, if you can't get a role in specifically at the company you want, or working in this direct space you want, try to get one that's going to be complementary to the role you want to have. And what I really mean by that is, oftentimes I'll interview candidates and they know everything about Web3. They know everything about, DeFi. but they can't tell me how money moves from a clearing agent through order entry, the necessary liquidity requirements that certain licenses may provide, payment flows. And what's so important, I think, in this space is this is a new way of doing things, oftentimes completely. You need to be able to understand the old way of doing it, because if you don't understand that, you won't be able to understand how to best improve on what exists. And when you think about, working at a business, well, that's really what the business is doing, right? I mean, you're presenting a better way of doing something that's probably completely new to whomever you're talking to. So having that foundation of how things used to be done, I think is really paramount.
It's like, what is different about working in business development in Web3 versus, maybe previous roles or other industries? What are you looking for, as you hire people onto your team?
The biggest difference is typically when you are in a business development role working for any type of company, whomever your kind of target audience is, chances are whatever it is, let's just say whatever it is you're selling, they're probably already doing it. In crypto and Web3, it's often the first time they're doing it. So, you're not usurping an existing provider. You are trying to convince them why they need to dedicate, budget, human resources, company bandwidth to something that's probably completely new. And with that always comes with education. You are going to be educating the people that you're talking to. Inevitably, you're going to know more about, of course, your product, the space, than they do. So in a lot of ways, that's something I enjoyed the most about my role, is helping people really understand. And again, I'll just use a simple example, the difference between proof of work and proof of stake, the technology aspect. But then there's also, in my role, of course, the business aspect. This is why you should be doing this. This is why it's going to drive client acquisition. This is why it's going to help the company, exceed, revenue goals. Trying to lean on as many kind of tangible numbers, as you possibly can. That's one of the things that I would say is kind of most unique to the Web3 space, and as compared to doing business development for a lot of other even, emerging tech industries.
So if you're looking to hire someone on your team, what are the traits that you're looking for? Maybe like a top 2 or 3 traits that you're looking for and that someone can go and work on and, add that to their skill set.
Yeah. Well, some of them are intangible, of course, things like enthusiasm. You need to be curious. You need to be flexible. And just to kind of expand upon that flexible piece, to what I mean is, I went to school that was finance and accounting. I have a lot of accountant friends, and what they love is at the end of the day, they know if they're right or wrong, because your debits equal your credits. Well, in this space, the law and the regulations are not set. You're often hitting a moving target. How people, define success is often, very different from one use case to the next. The target market that you're selling to could consistently shift depending, again, on rules and regulations. And as different, municipalities and governments issue guidance on things like digital assets, that really impacts, what your target market is and how you actually approach that market. Now, what do I look for, again, in potential candidates, besides enthusiasm? I mentioned it before, having an understanding not only of the existing technology today, but how things are already done. So again, whether that's a clearing process from a buy-sell brokerage standpoint, or maybe that's as simple as saying, well, you're buying NFTs on OpenSea, what would be the equivalent? How do people process, payment transactions for, art purchases today? Or, if you look at things like play to earn gaming, how does the ecosystem of, GameFi exist before crypto? So again, having that foundation is huge. And I would say it's almost more important than knowing everything about every, crypto asset out there. I mean, again, I point to Chainlink. What you do is you're at this nexus of the real world and this new emerging ecosystem. So understanding the value that your solution is delivering to not just TradFi, but all these different organizations who it's completely new to, is huge.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about ZeroHash, and then maybe maybe even give us a shameless plug on why someone should come work for you, and what's cool about working at ZeroHash.
I gave you a kind of a 30,000 foot view of really, who we are and what it is we do earlier, and targeting on the TradFi market to adopt crypto, and then targeting the crypto market to put them in a compliant framework for operating. So, we have 51 money transmission licenses, 2 bit licenses in the state of New York. We're working to build out that regulatory framework internationally. We've launched our UK and Brazilian entity, we've done the same thing in Australia. So again, obtaining more and more of these licenses is a big piece of our business. The other piece of our business, of course, is on the product side. So today, if you ask me, again, talk to me about your core clients. Well, it's digital banks. They want to offer things like custody, buy, sell, deposit withdrawal, staking yield and staking reward, staking yield. In some cases, a little more rare. We work with a lot of investment apps, broker dealers, of course. We are now just getting into the payment space, which is huge. We launched with Stripe this past November. We've essentially embedded, we call it a Web3 on-ramp. We've embedded ZeroHash into Stripe, where let's say a user is buying an NFT. Well, they just plug in their credit card information. Stripe then tells us to liquidate the fiat in question for the native token of the NFT that's being purchased. Let's say Solana, purchase that Solana, automate a withdrawal to the seller of that NFT so they can accept that payment, and then facilitate the NFC transfer back to the buyer, who oftentimes needs a custody solution. And that's something else that we can provide. So just given, again, how new the industry is, there's so much more that we could be doing. And we realize that, we've been really strategic around how we've grown the team, how we've rolled out different products. You don't want to get into that situation where you've stretched yourself too thin. You're over promising and under delivering. That's never a scenario that we want to be in. But, whether it's payments today, the next iteration will be, things like DeFi yield and staking. Our NFT suite today is pretty minimal, but we're going to spend a lot of time, energy, bandwidth, and money to help orgs stand up solutions like secondary markets. We want all of our clients to be able to participate in smart contract auctions without having to move their assets out of a ZeroHash wallet, albeit those assets may be held, embedded into a neobank like MoneyLion, Curve, Step, Eco, Current, who are all clients of ours. Those are the types of things that we're working on. And when I talk to prospects, and again, and comparing ZeroHash to the competitors, one thing that I always highlight is, if you're building a product to check a box, we're probably not the best solution. There's a lot of other, products out there. If you're trying to build a solution that's going to drive revenue and evolve over the next, 5-10 years, we are undoubtedly the leader in the space. And you can see that, again, in our technology and our roadmap for how we've kind of grown to date.
You guys are up to a lot of important stuff. The roadmap's very exciting. So yeah, if someone wants to learn more, maybe inquire about joining the ZeroHash team. Where do they reach out? How do they do that?
LinkedIn is really the best place to get in touch with me. I'm always happy to connect, whether it's questions about ZeroHash or any other role, or, best bar in Boston, always happy to have those conversations. And I would say, let me know how I can help. And again, I know we're talking to individuals here, but I say that to potential partners, potential clients. We want to be a thought partner. This is new, and I know I've said that a lot. But the more input, kind of the more guidance, the more resources you can bring to bear, to better. And I like being a part of that.
Fantastic. Cal, thanks for the time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, Jimmy. Happy to do it.